All right, I'm going to try out this wide angle for once. It's harder to hold the camera this way, but I thought it might be easier to view as well, though. So we're in Galatians here, and this is a tough section. And I've studied it many times. And what makes it so tough is, and just in case you're wanting to turn there before I get started, it's Galatians 2. It might be in the title there of the video, but Galatians 2, 15 to 21. What makes this so tough is that it really branches off into many, many areas. You can study the Judaizers, and if you go into studying the Judaizers, you have to deal with all kinds of doctrine concerning nomism and just dealing with you know how what the relationship with the law is like. But I'm going to try to summarize it as best I can, and that could be dangerous territory because it is very detailed. So, but I'll do the best I can. So there's some things being held in tension here. You have Paul, who at some point tries to explain that there are those who think, well, if you're saying you're justified by faith, then you're saying that the law was pointless. And Paul has to defend that. He says, no, the law served a point. It increased sin. So it served its purpose. It's just you don't understand its purpose, essentially, is what Paul says. It's more complicated than that, as I'm saying, but that's the gist of it. Now you get to this part, and the Judaizers have this kind of flip-flopped. It's like, well, if you say you don't hold to the law, then you're saying that Jesus provides an opportunity for you to increase sin in your life, that he becomes a servant of sin in a sense. And they're think they're defending Jesus here. Okay. They think it's, or I don't know if they're being genuine or not, but I think they probably are being, but they're saying that Paul is making Christ out to be a servant of sin because they're violating the law. You see? So it's almost the reverse of the other things Paul's had to deal with. In the most simplistic terms, it's almost the reverse. That's a little bit of setup here for trying to understand this passage. I did try, I sent a bunch of emails out to Albert Mohler about my robes not being available for blessing. So I asked about the glasses, and no response. And I mean, blasted him with emails about it, and absolutely no response. And I thought maybe if he could just have, quote, a Garrett fellow saying that they like the glasses, that may bless the glasses. But unfortunately, these cannot, I'm sorry, there's not official Southern Baptist glasses. So we'll just have to deal with, what we're dealing with. So chapter 2, starting verse 15. Now, this first few verses, as I understand, is actually a bit of agreement. And that makes sense that there's some things about the Judaizers Paul would agree with. Okay, so there's a bit of agreement here. Okay, Paul says, we ourselves are Jews by birth and not Gentile sinners. Okay, so Jewish sinners. Okay. Yet we know that a person is not justified by works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ. I don't think the Judaizers would have a problem with that, right? They're saying you need both. You need the law and you need Jesus. You need to obey the law and you need to obey Jesus. All right? That's what they're saying. Now, to us today, that sounds ridiculous. But passages like this in Galatians is why it sounds ridiculous. All right? So we also have believed in Christ Jesus in order to be justified. Now, when he's saying we and also, he's not talking about the Judaizers. He's talking about Jews and Gentiles. Let me start over. We ourselves are Jews by birth and not Gentile sinners. Yet we know that a person is not justified by works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ. So we also have believed in Christ Jesus, the Jews that became Christians. in order to be justified by faith in Christ and not by works of the law, because by works of the law, no one will be justified. Okay? So, no, neither Jew nor Greek, right? I mean, no one will be justified. All right, now, verse 17. Now, here's where he gets to the point of contention. But if, in our endeavor to be justified in Christ, we too were found to be sinners, is Christ then a servant of sin? Certainly not. So there we go. He's saying, look, to be justified by Christ is not to be justified by the law. To be justified by Christ is now to, well, I'm going to let him say it in his own words because he says it here in a second. For if I rebuild what I tore down, I prove myself to be a transgressor. He's talking about the law. He's saying, look, if I turn to Christ for salvation, why would I go back to the law? Why would I rebuild what I tore down? So he's saying that the Judaizers have misunderstood here, because if he holds to Christ, all right, and that means he can't hold on to the law. And the Judaizers are saying you have to hold to both. And since you have to hold to both, Paul is clearly making Christ to be a servant of sin. All right, that should be a lot clearer, I hope, anyways. If you read this in its entirety, I think it'll make more sense now. For if I rebuild what I tore down, I prove myself to be a transgressor. For through the law, I died to the law, so that I might live to God. Okay? So he basically says that he destroyed the law by putting his faith in Christ. And I want to be very clear on this. So, for if I rebuild what I tore down, I prove myself to be a transgressor. For through the law, I died to the law, so I might live to God. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not nullify the grace of God. For if justification were through the law, then Christ died for no purpose. So he kind of just sticks it to the Judaizers there at the very end, because he's basically saying, look, if there's any purpose in what Jesus had done, it's to make Paul and anyone who believes just through the work of the cross. Again, is that hard to understand today? No, it's not hard to understand today. It's how we understand the gospel today. But at this time, you needed a polemic to deal with this. And I'd say Paul did a pretty good job.